Well, it's not looking good for New Jeans. It was just 110 minutes in court. So New Jeans went back to court to try to reverse the injunction that was made against them. So remember, there were two things going on at once. First was the injunction, which is the quick legal ruling to just basically force a quick decision on a smaller matter. And in this case, it was whether New Jeans could or could not perform and do advertising deals without ADOR. And then the second lawsuit, the bigger one that takes years, started about a month after, and that had its first hearing, and that would be more centered on confirming the exclusive contract. But it was a very quick hearing because New Jeans had appealed right away after the injunction on March 7th, 14th, and then the 21st. So after the 21st of March, they filed, oh, we don't like this decision, we want to appeal. And relatively quickly, they got the hearing on that, but apparently nothing really changed. It was a very quick 10 minutes. Some people said 15, others, meet in the middle at 12 and a half minutes. But essentially, it seemed like the judge was trying to say, no, I don't want your number. And no, I don't want to meet you nowhere. Actually, reclaim my time. Let's get out of here, get to lunch. And it was a very quick hearing, but it was not open to the public. And wow, surprisingly, it seems as if if New Jeans is in the more losing position or a position where you can't really spin it, then they don't want any of the media there. And so the lawyers from both sides were the only people at the hearing. None of the people who are involved actually in the lawsuit were required to be there. And most of the times that's how it's supposed to work. You give it to the lawyer so that you can presumably go on with your life and not have to worry about going back and forth to court unless it's a very important hearing or you want to make some impression on the judge. Only information that we were able to glean out of it were the reporters who went and asked the lawyers directly after what happened. So ADOR's lawyers said that nothing has particularly changed since the injunction decision, which makes it seem as if the judge said okay, no, we're just going to keep the injunction. But it wasn't really clear whether it ended here or whether they were able to get another hearing and delay the process to come up with another go round to see if New Jeans lawyers can come up with something that would reverse the decision, but it looks highly unlikely. New Jeans side, the lawyer said we have nothing to say when they were asked by journalists. So essentially that injunction was like the precursor, like the appetizer to this main lawsuit that we're in now. There are different judges. There was a separate judge that did the injunction and then basically punted the football over to a different judge who is handling the actual multi-year long lawsuit. But essentially from the injunction, what had been concluded was that none of New Jeans' claims that there was a contract violation or breach of trust were accepted by the judge in the court. They said none of this stuff is going to pan out that actually creates a situation where you can just hop out of your exclusive contract. And because of that, New Jeans is not allowed to do things on their own. They're crying and saying about oh, we can't do any of our activities, we can't be artists. Yeah, they can. If they just go back to ADOR and resume their contract, tomorrow they can be planning their next music video or what kind of bubblegum they want to pop this time. But the injunction says if you want to do all of that, you can't run off and do it with some other producers or other agency and collect the money for yourself and not honor the agreement of how you're going to split the revenue and the profits with ADOR. And so that was the essential thing that was decided about the injunction that was ruled on March 21st. But why is this also interesting with the latest drama that's coming out about potential strife within the Bunny family? Well, this actually does stem back to the injunction, the first hearing on March 7th, the one where all the girls showed up in their funeral glam and went to court. And at that hearing, the judge specifically said, so it's in the transcripts. So like, when they're all complaining about, why y'all talking about this? Yeah, well, it's in the transcripts, and the reporters are reporting on the transcripts and the receipts that are in there. And part of the thing that was in there was the judge asked, hey, we need to clear something up because it looks like there is a conflict between the parents of one of the members who it's not clear yet whether she actually has permission to move on with this situation here, like whether she had been approved. So if you are a minor in Korea, if you want to go to court and do all that stuff, you got to get like a permission slip signed by your parents, so it looked like there could be a bit of a conflict with whether one of the girls was allowed to be on this field trip, over to the Magic Kingdom of Courtland in Seocheodong. And especially if she's going to be getting on this field trip bus for the next few years. So the judge in the first injunction, like from the get-go, was like saying like, we need to make sure the permission slip is valid. And essentially what was happening was there was a ruling going on in family court for one of the parents wanted to lop off the other parent. So essentially now the cat's out of the bag. We've seen the mainstream media report Hyein's parents did not agree on how to move forward with this lawsuit. Hyein's father wanted out. He wanted to get off the train at the next stop. Hyein's mama said, no, we're riding this Snowpiercer to the end, even if it has to loop around the world a few times and go through some polar ice caps. And so in order to do that, though, the permission slip had to be signed. And it looked like a stalemate in this war between mother and father. And so Mama went to court. It's not really clear like who made the initial suit, but they went to court and essentially the judge sided with essentially sort of like a half emancipation. Like they essentially emancipated Hyein from her father. So the father has no longer any legal decision-making power. So he can't sign the permission slip or deny signing the permission slip even if he wanted to. Everything is now in the mother's control. The mother is aligned with Hee-jin. The reason why there was a bit of confusion, and also it could have been a media play, but in the court documents, when the judge asked about, okay, defendant number 4, and it had listed the last name Kang, it didn't show the full name. So then they're like thinking, okay, well, the only member here that has a last name Kang who's a minor is Hyein. Hyein. We all, remember that Instagram account with that DAOR campaign that even the bots got confused which one it was, Hyein or Hyein. So people were saying like, oh, it's Hyein. And then the parents, or probably Nugeen's mama, let's just be clear at this point, the parents of the parents is probably Nugeen's mama. Nugeen's mama is the Wang Unni. And so it seemed like somebody took advantage of it, basically saying like, okay, we need to clear things up. It is not true what people are saying in the media. It is not about Hyein. All of this stuff about Hyein that you're saying is not true. But therefore, they were trying to extend it and make it sound like the entire claim that there's a conflict between a mother and father was untrue, because they said all of the parents are in agreement and in alignment. And in a tricky JIT way, that actually is true. Why? Because legally, Hyein's father is no longer her parent. So all of the remaining parents who are legal parents are all in agreement. So when they're saying, so that's how you JIT it. You have to find a way where you are telling the truth, but you're telling the truth about essentially kind of a misdirect or a half lie. And so all of the legal parents are in agreement. So that is true, but they just didn't mention that, oh, well, we threw one of the parents off the bus like 2 weeks ago. And then they said, it's not true about this thing about Hyein, which is actually true because it was about Hyein, but they failed to mention, yeah, but the drama is about Hyein. So that's essentially that situation where they were able to make sure that Hyein's permission slip is all good and she is now aboard this bus. Now, why is it really interesting that it was Hyein's father who was the one that wanted to get off of this train to nowhere? Because remember back, now when we remember these things, it becomes clearer. Oh, when we first hear about these instances, we're always like, well, is it true or is it not? Or could it be? Like, we're confused. And so it doesn't sink in. And now when we reflect back on the deviousness of it all, we can see that this was definitely one deviled egg. Remember DAVOLINK? DAVOLINK was that Minions Wi-Fi manufacturer that seemed to be struggling, but, they had some tie with Hyein's uncle. And this is the uncle on the father's side. The father who actually moved out of the house, is sleeping on the couch of either his sister, or his brother. And so the older brother is the uncle that had the connection to DAVOLINK. And the DAVOLINK was supposed to be, it looked like it was probably the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 12th, 1000th choice on that roster of like where they're going to get some investment. But Hee-jin was caught by dispatch and of going to the house of the chairman of DAVOLINK to seek about $5 million. With today's exchange rate, maybe about $3 million. Just kind of cash. We're going to make an agreement. Y'all going to be our new home. Because where is Hee-jin's going to go if they're going to flee ADOR? They're going to be, homeless runaway K-pop girls, which they sort of are right now, or they're going to find, a place and a little space in the Wi-Fi router factory to set up maybe like a rehearsal studio and maybe a makeup room, and then they can go bully the Wi-Fi factory workers in the hallway. And so that was supposed to be the plan, and that was supposed to be set up by the uncle of Hyein. So Hyein's uncle got burned by this situation. Oh, totally embarrassed, burned. So of course, he's the older brother of Hyein's father. So, your older brother, in Korea, like there's this thing about, respect for age, and this uncle is the 큰 아버지 of the family. So essentially, out of all the siblings, it's the oldest male, so he has a bit of a position in the family. So of course, you're gonna have to, if the older brother is complaining about how he got burned and how he don't like this, he must hate the JIT Miss Jezebel, and there's gonna be some sort of family dynamic there where he's at least gonna be sympathetic to his older brother, if not totally aligned. And it looked like he's totally aligned because he wanted to, take that girl out of that Snowpiercer train and see if they can just make it work. But this was a situation where, if we look back on it, if you're just wondering like, what, this is so confusing, like what is this DAVOLINK? So right, it was the Wi-Fi manufacturer.
Just like you, I saw the Minions Wi-Fi routers on Reddit and went, those can't be real, can they? But then, unlike you, I actually bought them. So here they are, Bob and Kevin, ready to turn your Wi-Fi evil.
And so this was last fall. Remember, Mini-jin's last fall, especially September, was supposed to be like her victory lap that got Nancy Kerrigan. And so she went to the DAVOLINK CEO after everything had been sort of red carpeted by the uncle of Hyein, and she asked for $5 million investment into New Jeans. The chairman declined. How do we also know this? Oh, the chairman spilled all the tea and the beans in January of this year. Yeah, because he's mad because, go along the story, he was being accused of being Delulu and having a fantasy of meeting Mini-jin, similar to like, our little Seron's Instagram, that kind of case. Because in this meeting, so the genius of this meeting, and like, okay, Mr. Chairman was, he's chairman for a reason. So he's saying like, okay, I don't want to give, no, I'm not giving you a straight up wire transfer of all this money. He said, instead, let's do it this way. So you're going to actually take over this Wi-Fi router company, this tech company that's expanding into entertainment. Eventually, what Mr. Chairman, like I'm as Mr. Chairman is going to do is like, I'm just going to sell the remaining shares of this and you guys will eventually own this. But before that happens, we're going to seek investment. We're going to make a fabulous announcement. This is going to be New Jeans ADOR Mini-jin. And so the value of that company will go up after, first you get some other investors and, easily get that $5 million that you want me to send. No, we're going to get other people's money, bring the $5 million in, raise the stock value of this company. And then I'm, as Mr. Chairman, I'm going to bolt. I'm going to cash out. Didn't like them, Wi-Fi routers anyway. Now that business seems like, And so this was a very genius move. And then the management rights would be essentially Mini-jin, but on paper through Hyein's uncle, and then also one other person, last name Park, who seems reportedly to be involved in the New Jeans team, especially with touring. So how do we know this? Because after this whole meeting, they're like, yeah, we're going to do this. The chairman filed with the Korea's version of the SEC, the new board of directors for his company that included Hyein's uncle and this person, last name Park, and he even had the receipts. He said, like, after we did the meeting, we took a nice little photo, and here's Mini-jin, here's the uncle, and here's the Park person with me, and we're all like, yeah, we're gonna move on to the future. Well, during this time, like after it started not going Mini-jin's way and it looked like she could get caught on breach of contract, which essentially would mean she loses all of her stock options, she just did an about face. She just ghosted. Whatever the term is, like, I don't know her situation. So October was when the chairman filed all of the documents, showing the receipts about like, yep, Hyein's uncle is going to be on the board of directors. And then in November, Mini-jin just says in the media, I never met the man. I don't know who he is. What? I don't know her. And then, because she was so believed at that time, this DAVOLINK CEO was turned into like a laughingstock fool. They were saying like, oh, you delusional chairman, you're pretending that you met with Mini-jin. Are you like smitten with New Jeans mama? Like, why are you lying about meeting with Mini-jin? And he was fuming because he publicly, embarrassed him, called him a liar. And not only that, the stock price dropped. It dropped so fast, like in Korea, if it drops more than 30%, trading on that stock automatically stops. So it's like at 29.99%. Like if it drops, then they try to make sure that it doesn't keep dropping all the way down. So there's like a intervention that's made. Oh, that happened to him. That happened to him. The stock price sort of recovered after that, but because of all this situation, he had not only had his stock price go down, he looks dumb, and I bet the Minion Wi-Fi routers, like, also had a plummet in sales. And so this was in November, right? So he probably fuming over Christmas dinner and New Year's, and probably, that when then fireworks went off with the countdown to the new year, he's probably like, oh, hell no, I'm gonna call up dispatch. So he called up dispatch, and then he just spilled it all. Actually, no, it wasn't even dispatch. He was probably just like auto dialing everybody, and it was 10 Asia that he was able to get to do this exclusive interview. Oh my God. And he was livid. Remember, like, he even freaked out the reporter about like how angry he was. So he had something to get off his chest. At least he finished his New Year's resolution right away in January. And that essentially is going to be a very big part of evidence, most likely, about the case against Hee-jin for tampering and breach of duty and conduct and all them things. You dumb, you just call it, it's just like breach. You should just get a t-shirt that says breach. Breach and everything. So just from these two examples, we saw just straight up lying. Yes, it was a situation of tampering. You went to DAVOLINK to try to seek outside investors when you're not allowed to do that whatsoever. And straight up lying, saying that like, there ain't no family conflict. I mean, if it was just maybe like yelling in the living room or the kitchen and like arguing over the permission slip or something, that's one thing. Maybe you could say like, oh no, we resolved it. But taking it to court and then emancipating one of the daughters from one of their parents, I'd say that's kind of conflictual, don't you think? Conflictual-ish? Yeah. But that's just where they're willing to go to stay on this Snowpiercer train. And I hope it stays on the rails, but it's looking like it's going to be up ahead, a very dangerous corner to turn. And so just got to see, hope for the best. And all throughout this whole process, there's no music being made, no music videos, no bubblegum being smacked and popped. It's just a standstill for the New Jeans girls. So that's kind of the saddest part of it all. So we'll see if they come to their senses. Definitely if the bunnies keep coming to their senses, but a lot of them apparently are peeling off and just abandoning the fandom. And so it's just going to be a more, like, the ones that remain are going to be the most toxic and the ones with the biggest vitriol, which I think we should also address, and HYBE should also address. Even though HYBE announced saying that they're going to protect New Jeans, and that's all good. It was just like a few hours before the appeal to the injunction hearing. Both sides were trying to, kind of do their last minute homework. New Jeans was, had scrubbed their social media accounts for NJZ to try to look, either covering up the evidence or looking like apologetic. Didn't work. And then ADOR was just like one-upping them, saying like, we're going to protect you from all of this horrible, maliciousness against New Jeans. Well, they might start also with the maliciousness of their fandom, but that's going to be another story for another day. All right, guys, what do you think? Do you think that this whole situation with the ongoing lawsuits going here or there are going to actually work out in New Jeans' favor? At this point, it's so confusing on New Jeans' side. Up until this point, Hee-jin was able to simplify and make these things very palatable to pursue her agenda. Now people just confused about what's going on with the New Jeans girls. So I don't know. I don't know if that's going to actually work out in their favor. And as things go along, it's just going to get more confusing and more technical, and people are just going to be like, what's going on? Anyhow, what's going on with your thoughts? Put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.